we were talking about the weather because it's been crazy in the South down here. I live in Dallas, Texas, and the weather is nuts. Tomorrow, this date is the February 19th. It's going to be a high of about 10, 15 degrees. That's nuts. Even for the end of February, it's nuts. Jess lives in Colorado, and there's a lot of winds around there, and it's colder here than it is in Colorado, which is nuts. And so we're talking about this. We're getting warming up for the podcast for the episode today. And I said, you know what, we're not going to do a cold open, but I think because of the weather, I think this is a good cold open. Anyway, thanks for that. I know everyone just rolled their eyes. All of my friends and all of the people that watch this show just rolled their eyes, like, "Oh God, this goofball." But anyway, you're not going to roll your eyes at the episode and the topic for today, because we're going to learn a lot about brand image and protection. We have with us Jess Wright, who is a leader in the space of, again, protecting your brand, and protecting the image on Amazon. Jess, I'm really excited to have you on today to ask you some questions about this, get your thoughts, and also give some information to people as far as how they can go about, again, protecting their brand.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It is something that I am so passionate about with all of the things that you need to be thinking about in the e-commerce space. I feel like it all kind of starts with this. So it's something that no matter what I'm doing in my day to day, it always comes back to this topic.
Right. I want to first give the people some more info on this. How did you get into this topic? Did something happen that led you to this? Was it just something that you just researched and found out? What led you to being interested in brand protection?
I think it is because I worked in manufacturing first. My start in e-commerce was working in manufacturing for a toy brand and for a brand that had been around for like 150 years at that time, and so now close to 160, probably maybe a little bit older even. And seeing how things changed in the e-commerce space for that brand. um, I mean, from having a trademark that had been in place for 100 years and was actually, expiring, and having to go and make sure we didn't lose that and get it across different countries as well. And then just seeing how putting the product online in Toys R Us, or, online on mom and pop shops, and how much more visibility there was, and how knockoffs just started kind of, coming out of the woodwork, and the changes with, international sellers as well, manufacturer sellers, to like living that for 10 years made me really interested in how we could protect ourselves. And then as I moved into more of the service provider space, I'd had that personal experience that then, gave me things to look out for,
Right.
and, wanting to help other brands be able to do the same.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a great origin story. You're like a superhero for brand protection. So very cool. Well, I want to get right into it. I want to talk about this because I think this is a topic that I don't know much about. And so that really excites me to learn as much as I possibly can from you today. Um, so you mentioned some knockoffs, and those are very common. I wouldn't say I mean, you might disagree with me, but people say that Amazon is notorious for some counterfeit products, some unauthorized sellers. And just to get right into the basic questions, like what is some of the more common threats, or um, what is the biggest things a seller should look out for in regards to brand protection for today in 2025, 2024,
Yeah.
2025?
Where are we? When are we?
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think necessarily that true, like counterfeits are one of the bigger issues. They exist, obviously. I think more of just like general IP threats, like someone stealing your image, or you know, your your brand name or your content from your listings. That's a much bigger threat in terms of IP. Then there are, the knockoffs that are not counterfeits, right? They're not infringing on any patents, they're not infringing on any trademarks, but if you came up with a truly unique product and you have spent a ton of time building your brand and you have something that is innovative, there are people who are popping up with things that they're not saying it's your product. It's not like, a purse vendor on the street of New York with, a knockoff Gucci, but it is a threat to your brand because you've spent a lot of time truly building up something to get brand loyalty and get recognition and have people come to you for a reason. And then you have this threat of those things that are maybe white label versions of this. And I was on another podcast recently talking about something similar, and we really kind of got into that distinction of what is a brand versus what is a white labeled product versus what is a true, just kind of out of the box
Right.
knockoff that is not putting in any effort, and where do those things all fall in the spectrum. And I think that's the bigger threat, those things that are coming straight from the factory with no branding behind them, no consideration for like actually selling a product. They're just popping up, sending in some product, and trying to capitalize on sales of an established brand, or even some of those white label sellers who are trying to figure out how to turn a cool product into a brand.
Right. Yeah, and it's very interesting numbers wise to think that um, this is. I mean, like you said, it's probably not the biggest issue with the counterfeit products. I saw something that Amazon, I think in 2023, so it's a bit older, but they seized about 7 million, which is a big number. 7 million is a big number. But when you look at it from the grand scope of like how many units are being moved on Amazon, it's not that big. It's not that, big of a deal. I think you're right. I think I want to get more into these IP issues, and intellectual properties for anyone that doesn't know what IP means, and all that kind of good stuff, and taking a look at just where we are in terms of that. What is Amazon doing to help prevent that? What issues do sellers commonly face? I would love if you have any examples for us about something that the more dramatic, the better, of like someone stole someone's IP and ruined their brand. I'm a big fan of those over the top dramatic examples of
Yeah.
things like this happened, but just like, oh my gosh. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
no, no,
you made another point actually really quick before we move on to the stuff that's really happening. The point of Amazon seizing those things, the true counterfeits, that's why it's not as big of an issue on Amazon as some of these other things, because that is something that Amazon is proactively addressing, and that Customs and Border Patrol is proactively addressing. If you have registered trademarks, if your brand is big enough and you're doing enough, and you can get those protections in place with Customs and Border Patrol, they're actually doing that work for you. They're
right,
looking out for those trademarks and they're making sure that those shipments are coming in, and Amazon is actively pursuing that as well. So these are the things that no one else is actively taking a look for you. Amazon will defense, like, go after things defensively when you bring it up, but they're not proactively taking care of some of these other IP issues.
right. And that same article that I was reading, I saw that they spent in the same year, 2023, they spent 1.2 billion on this and employed. They had a team of like thousands and thousands of people to, like you said, proactively go after this and tackle it. So it's very interesting. It's very neat to see them do that and take that stance. It's reassuring as a brand, as someone that works with a lot of brands. It's very reassuring to see that they care and that they're really trying. So
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of sellers don't necessarily. It's hard in the day to day when you're still dealing with all these other little things that pop up that are,
right,
they add up and they are impactful to your business. It's easy to forget that there is a lot of stuff happening on Amazon, and everything can't be addressed all at once. And so some things have to be priority, and it will happen, and they're moving in the right direction. But it's I think someone gave the analogy once that it's like it's Amazon's a really big ship. So to turn that ship takes a lot of time. So we have to be patient in seeing some of these issues get dealt with. And that's why so many of us exist in this space as service providers, to be that extra piece when Amazon isn't actively, enforcing or addressing things.
right, yeah, and it's nice to have not just Amazon. There's a lot of monopoly talk about Amazon, but it's nice to not just have them, be the only person doing this. So it's neat. But I do want to get into what you mentioned, some other threats to brand protection or brand security. So basically, what are some of these threats? What are some of the biggest brand protection threats on Amazon right now? If it's not this counterfeit and other fake product things, what should brands be worried about?
Yeah, this one's a really old one, but it still persists to this day, and it always surprises me how many people aren't aware that it's, something that's happening. Um, and this is why branding is so important from like step one on Amazon. If you, as a brand, or even you're not selling on Amazon, it's still important for you to have a brand presence and have brand registry on Amazon, because one of the more common things that can happen is if someone else has decided to set your product up for you on Amazon and sell it and you don't care because you have a reseller network and that's fine with you, um, what can happen is if no one's actively selling on that listing anymore, someone can hijack it for their own product, right? If it's not brand registered, anyone can come in and say, I want to make changes to this ASIN. And so they can change things about the details about your product. They can change the images. They can take over the listing completely and start selling something else. But your product reviews, your brand name is still in there. So it can hurt your brand image. And I wish that I had a really great example of a specific one that got really weird, but try that out sometime. Just kind of search for things that have high volume and a ton of reviews. And a lot of times, what you're going to find is the reviews have nothing to do with the product itself. Somebody's hijacked that listing, they've listed something else entirely, and they're using your history to generate a lot of sales for their product, because a lot of people look at the reviews, see that it's 5 stars, and they don't go through and read those reviews and make sure that it's actually that product. So if you haven't taken those steps to protect your brand, even if you're not selling on the Amazon platform, your brand can still be impacted by some of those really black hat tactics.
Right. Absolutely. We get a lot of those people that come into us that say, "Oh, I let my reseller do this for a while, but now I want to do it." And they've been doing it for however many years, and it's just like it's in rough shape. It's in rough shape. So, you're right. You said from day one, it's important to have this good branded image and make sure that it's maintained well. Even if you're not the one selling, I mean, but you still have to be super involved. I mean, it's your product, it's your brand. Um, and so it's very interesting to see some brands, like you said, just sort of give that up, even though it's how important, how many eyes are going to be on it on Amazon. It's very interesting. And
Yeah, they don't want to deal with all the other Amazon issues that
right,
persist, so they think I just don't want to be in that space. But yeah, you don't realize how important it is to establish that.
yeah. And speaking of day one, something that we do at Velocity is day one right away. We don't even wait. The first thing we do is obviously after your account is open, is we get you set up on brand registry. Um, what can you give us some breakdown of what maybe some of these issues could be prevented somehow if these companies had brand registry, or how important brand registry is to a brand on Amazon that's trying to protect their IP.
Yeah, there's, I mean, so many things there in brand registry, from the actual protection things like, transparency or Project Zero, or things that will actually like stop others from being able to sell your product, um, or stopping those true counterfeits from being available, to things like branding tools, all of the arsenal of things that Amazon makes available, like certain types of content, like your premium A plus content that you can't get access to in most cases unless you are a registered brand. That's all part of protecting your brand as well, because that lets you on every single one of your listings be able to tell your brand story and be able to create these modules that will take people through your brand, not just here is this one product, but
Right.
comparison charts and things where you can click around and see other things, and just more opportunity for you to implement more of your brand images, your brand font, your brand, styles, and all of those things to make sure that every time somebody lands on one of your pages, they recognize immediately that it is your brand, and there's no confusion of I did this search for this specific brand. Obviously, other brands are going to pop up in that search, and so if they're just clicking around and they're all of the pages kind of are, each page is something different, each detail page is not cohesively branded, they may not realize when they're moving away from your brand into something else. But with all of those brand tools that allow you to implement that consistency, or even the brand store itself that makes sure that they can go straight to everything for your brand and just shop around, you can't do those things without brand registry.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's what we emphasize very heavily as well. It's just, we wanna look good in the algorithm. Yes, it's important for conversions, but, it also brings up that's actually a great segue into another topic I wanted to cover, to slightly cover. You mentioned already brand loyalty, and that's something that I think is directly linked, obviously, of course, to your brand image. And of course, brand registry lets you build your story out. It gives you a plus content. Your brand story lets them tell all about who you are, like you mentioned. But I noticed, at least from my experience with maybe meeting with a lot of people and a lot of brands that are doing okay, but maybe could be doing better. One of the things they're always missing is that they're always prioritizing how easy it is to lower your price, or how not so much that, but they really want to make sure that their price point is perfect, and they almost prioritize that over brand loyalty. Do you have any thoughts or any strategies on, why brand loyalty, and how why brands should really foster the trust and loyalty on Amazon, almost in tandem with the price and maybe the rest of the puzzle pieces?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there, specifically about the price, because I think something that a lot of brands don't think about is how having a lower price can sometimes devalue their brand, and not just like long term to thinking about their own pricing strategy, which is a piece of that, but in the eye of the consumer. Cheaper isn't always better. And in a world like 2025, where there are these really cheap options that people know, like a Temu or a Shein or even now Amazon Haul, they know that they're going to buy something that is really cheap, that isn't going to have a long lifespan, that they know they're not necessarily getting the best value, but they're going to try this thing out. And you don't want to inadvertently put yourself into that bucket. But if you don't have a ton of brand recognition, if you don't have a ton of brand loyalty, then how can you convince people that it is worth that higher price point on a kind of a less dynamic platform than being able to go into a store and pick up and feel the things and truly inspect it.
Hmm.
So that's where, yeah, that branding, the brand loyalty, just being able to tell that brand story gives you the opportunity to set your pricing at what your product is really worth and back that up with what they're actually going to get by telling the story up front. It's worth paying 3 times what this other product is because we are a real brand, because
Right.
we will stand behind our product, because we have all of these features that we've been able to show you in our listing. And when you get it, you're going to be happy. You need to be able to make that pretty immediate connection for people between the price and the value, or they're going to move on to that next listing that's a lower price unless they've already established that your brand is the brand that they want. And once you hook them, then it's your job to make them the repeat purchaser or to buy the add-ons or whatever it is, but you have to get that first step first.
Right. And that's a great points in there. I mean, you look at the high end brands, that no offense to these brands out there, I will never own, things like Gucci and other, I don't even know, the clothing brands that'll never be on Amazon directly because they say that's not where we would never sell on Amazon. You're going to come to our store because we're Gucci, and you're
Hmm.
going to buy our products there. And I think part of that is a great way of showing that's part of the experience. You might not just be you're not
Right.
just buying this product, you're buying the experience that the product is going to give you. You're buying the emotions that you're going to get from owning the product or from using it or from doing a task. Like thinking more for Amazon now, the brands can't just, you're not just selling a product, you're selling an experience, you're selling emotion behind it as well. And so if you don't have those visuals to back that up and show you, hey, listen, buddy, listen, customer, you're going to love this product. You're gonna love the way it makes you feel after you use it, even if it's not something, like directly about, like, this isn't gonna make you feel better, but um, if it's something like you're gonna love having this product in your house or in your collection or in your whatever, there's a million things on Amazon, so it's hard to generalize the feelings into one. But you're selling that emotion, and you need that content to really back it.
Yeah, even, that next level down, right? You said like a Gucci or something like that. They don't have that, but think about a Sony, which is a
Right.
pretty big brand, and they are in stores and people do touch those things. They also have a really big presence on Amazon, and that's because, these are Sony headphones. I love them. I know I like Sony products. So I don't necessarily need to go into the store anymore to have that brand connection and feel the things if Sony's doing a good enough job on Amazon selling me on the product, right? And there's not another brand that's capturing me. I've already established that I like this brand, that brand loyalty piece. So I'm going to go to their Amazon listings, and as long as it tells me everything I want to know, then I'm probably just going to buy it right there. And if it doesn't tell me everything I want to know, and I now live, in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, and it's an hour and a half for me to even probably get to a store that has the Sony headphones, I'm going to look at some other brands potentially and consider something else that can deliver to me in 2 days out here in the middle of nowhere, because that's what the consumer expects now.
Right. And it's that convenience too. It kind of comes with it, of getting that to you quicker, like you said. And You want to win them over. You want to, as a brand, you should want to win them over with, obviously you want your product to be good and all that kind of good stuff, but you said it. I mean, it has to be emotionally delivering. So,
Yeah, and over and over again, right? I am already loyal to this brand,
right.
but I might make a different decision if their detail page doesn't tell me everything I need or if something else catches my eye. So you can't just stop once you think you've won your segment of the audience. You have to keep that going.
Right. And it's important to expand as well. And we're getting into some other topics like brand, growth and stuff like that. But yeah, no, you gotta keep expanding. I Speaking of headphones, I just made a purchase recently. I am a gamer. Shout out to all my Xbox friends out there that watch the podcast. And I needed new headphones because mine were old. They were about 2, 3 years old. They were getting there, and I wanted to check out a new brand. So I was looking around. And eventually, I bought the same brand that I already had. Kind of like your Sony example of they won me over. They got me back in. It was a good deal. It was a good price point, but it was also, they were like, "Oh, this does this. This is exactly what you're looking for." Exactly, it was exactly what I was looking for in terms of features. Like, it was very comfortable, nice expansion. I have a big head, so I need it to be not like, if it's too wide, if the arms are gonna break. I can't have that.
Hmm.
So they have good expansion. They're very comfortable on my ear, all the stuff. So you're right. I mean, just thinking about my own personal life, I know everybody watching here has a good example of that. Of There's a brand I buy over and over again that might not be the cheapest, but they constantly win me over. This is exactly kind of what we're talking about.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. But going back a little bit to IP protection and maybe also some of Amazon's policies, um, there's a lot of things that they update. Like, I know this title change is a new one, with the whole 200 characters, no repeats. Funny enough, I actually had someone come in to us the other day that had a bunch of repeats in the titles, and I was like, "Dude, you got to change this really quickly because you're going to get in trouble."
I have
Um,
so much to say on that topic, by the way, but I know that's not
Please.
officially what we're talking about. That
Oh,
one
about the
was a
title, you
really,
mean?
yeah, that one was a really
Oh,
interesting thing to me because I feel like, yeah, not your specific example, but I yes, that one was really interesting to me because there was so much like uproar about it, but so much of that to me had already been in place. Amazon had been saying these things for years,
yeah,
and I don't understand why we as service providers, why the users, whoever it is, like this has always been my adoption plan is if Amazon says it, I'm going to follow it because if they've been telling us for years that the optimal title is 60 to 80 characters, even if they let me have 200, I'm going to try and stick to 60 to 80 and what they tell me of, brand, attribute, size, whatever it is, because they're telling me that's what's optimal. They're telling me this is what's going to perform best. It must be what their algorithm's going to work with best. Why would I not follow those suggestions? And why would I ever repeat words in my title unless there are specific use cases and they have updated that policy to like account for those specific use cases? But why would I use the same word multiple times even if I am maxing out the 200? I get
right.
200. Let's use everything I've got. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a really interesting thing to me when that came up.
I see that a lot with all images and with videos and stuff, like when Amazon is saying, "Hey, you should put a video on your listing." It's like the teacher saying, "Hey, there's 3
This is going
chapters
to
in
be
this
on the
textbook."
test.
Right, and like this one chapter is really important. You should
Yeah.
look at this chapter and understand it very heavily. And then I'm saying, "I'm gonna look at the other chapters anyway." It's like,
Yeah.
well, no wonder you got a 60 or a 75, whatever, on the
Yep.
test. It's very interesting to see people that come in here that don't have a video, that don't have all the tools. They have brand registry, right? But they don't have a brand store. They don't have any. Why? Amazon tells you that you increase your conversions by 10 to 15%. So I'm
I
with you.
think
At
there's
the
even
very,
like a brand launch playbook that
yeah,
says do these things.
do
Like go
this.
get your brand registry and now go do
Right.
these other 5 things.
Amazon has the answer keys. They know what's going to move better in their algorithm. They created the algorithm.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but it's very interesting. But speaking on like stuff like this title change and stuff like these official policy updates, they've had a decent amount, and the talk surrounding intellectual property and the issues has evolved definitely over the past couple of years. What what challenges do you think, aside from reading comprehension of the Amazon playbook, what challenges do you think brands will commonly face with this stuff, and maybe even some more outside of Amazon themselves issues? But what challenges do they face? How can they proactively maybe avoid some of these issues?
Yeah, this area in particular. is so interesting because when you think about like Amazon brand registry, it's made to help brands, but also it creates some of these extra barriers or hoops to jump through because you've got to play within these rules and you've got to do the things that it says, and it can sometimes be a problem, which this is a problem on Amazon side, but you're enrolled in brand registry, so now you want to make changes to your listing, and then you have to like you get these extra messages from Amazon when you've submitted something saying, okay, we're going to review this and see if we can apply this to the listing, and it's like, but I am the brand owner. I'm the registered brand owner. Why is my thing not automatically getting updated? And so you can see where all of these roadblocks that they've put in to try to protect things are now creating some extra barriers for the brands who are trying to do things the right way. So, like, first and foremost, that is the biggest thing I think that people are experiencing and getting frustrated with. But it's something that was done to make things go more smoothly and to protect your brand a little bit more. And so I have to constantly be reminding myself, like, they're reviewing it because they want to make sure that it does align with the things that we've already put in place to protect our brand. So that's the number one most frustrating thing when Amazon changes the rules. Then to comply with the rules, you have to jump through the hoops to get
Right.
those new things implemented. And we're seeing it a lot with right now with supplement companies, because there's so many new restrictions in terms of what you can talk about in your listing for supplement companies, or in terms of the compliance that you have to have in place. So
And
um,
they're good about that. They're good about that. I remember the big one I always encounter on these issues with supplements specifically, but also with some other slightly related products is the disease claims of what you can and cannot say
yeah,
on in your bullet points, even in your images, they'll scan them. Of hey, this is good. You have to say it's a very interesting verbiage you have to use when saying like even if the product is genuinely made for that, you can't claim like hey this will potentially help with this. You have to word it very differently,
yeah,
which is very interesting
yeah,
to kind of again comply with and make sure that you don't run into these issues. Um,
yeah. That's
Because again,
actually. Oh, go ahead.
I would say just again, even some of these products can actually do that, but Amazon won't let you make that claim. You have to say it differently.
Yeah, and that you brought up a point that I was going to expand on, which was how can you be prepared for some of these things? Think about like being retail ready for a retail store, and then the strategy is completely different on Amazon. So you brought up the images and how for supplements or other things with the disease claims, they will scan the images. So you need to be prepared. If you are someone who's lucky enough to not have been flagged yet for a listing that says that it provides pain relief, which you can't say. You cannot
Right.
use the word pain in your listing unless certain factors apply. But in most cases, over the counter supplements type stuff, you can't say that, right? So you can say it, relieves discomfort or aids in, recovery after something. And so if you are someone who is lucky enough that you haven't been flagged, or if you're getting ready to put up new listings, just keeping in mind that these are the terms that you can't use. So go ahead and scrub your listings if they exist. Go look for these things. And we have a list of terms that we can always share with people that kind of it's a running list because those things change on a daily basis what you
Yeah.
can't say. But then address those images because a lot of people will go through and remove anti-inflammatory or pain from their listings, but then they don't address the listing or the images. And the first thing that will happen is when you go to Amazon and say, okay, I've removed these terms, my listing is now compliant, please, reinstate. The very first thing they will ask you for is, if they don't already exist, upload every single side of the box image to your listing. And as soon as you do that, if the content is on your box, your listing is going to, be reflagged and it's not getting reinstated. So it goes beyond just infographics and things that you already might have on the listing, but the product packaging itself, which you may have retail ready for selling in Walgreens, that's not going to fly on Amazon because if that package that you use in Walgreens to sell your product and it says the things that your product actually does, you can't say those things on Amazon. So you almost need an entirely different style of packaging,
Yeah.
to have on the listing, because also whatever is on the listing needs to match what your consumer is getting, or there's going to be different issues there as well.
Right. Even if it's slightly off, like we had, good examples. We had one company I work with was introducing new branding, which is fine, totally valid. They had brand new images. It was great. and they wanted to start uploading those images right away. And I said, no, we can't. We have to sell. They had hundreds and hundreds of units of the old branding still. And I said no, because it's the same product, which is different branding, so they can use the same UPC code, same ACE, and all that. And so we can't. We have to wait because someone will get that product in a new branding, and we can talk about reviews and how strange some people are out there with this stuff that would get this and say, "Oh, it's the same product with new branding." Even if we had like a sticker on the packet, the sticker on the image that said, "We have new packaging. It looks like this." They wouldn't care. They'll report it. Like, this is not what I ordered. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, and in
Um,
this category, it can take one report of that for
you're done.
Amazon to pull down the listing and say,
You're done.
this is something that people consume and this is a critical
Right.
issue.
It was a very
Yeah.
good product, I will say. I don't want to say the name of it. I don't know if that's. It was Bacon Jam. That's
I
not the
was gonna
name
say it's your
of the
okay.
brand, but like it's someone I work with, and it was very very good products. I see them in the supermarket now. Actually, it's very cool. But anyway, yeah, they were all in on these new images. The images looked really good. They were much better than the old ones, but we had to sell through that product. We
Yeah,
had to
and
sell through the old packaging.
a
So
tip for that, if you're probably doing this, but just for all the brands out there who might be watching, is you can, if you're FBA, obviously, if you're fulfilling it yourself, you have much more control over that. But a good tip for this type of thing for FBA is to set up two different SKUs, so you can clearly turn off the old SKU and turn on that new SKU. So new SKU is new branding, old SKU is old branding. That way, if things are returned, if the warehouse finds things, they're attached to that old SKU and they don't automatically get back into your inventory and
gets
start
flagged.
causing you
Yeah.
issues. Yeah, you can just have those things removed from Amazon and sell through different channels, if you decommission that old SKU once you've sold through the inventory that was there.
Right. And this was very early in my Amazon career, I will admit, so I did not know that little hack. Uh, but so I was unable to do that. But now I know. And so that is something that we at Velocity will have a lot of, I don't want to say workarounds. That's kind of sounds shady. But there's a lot of tips and tricks. Like you said, like Jez, I'm sure you've got a million of them. But there's a lot of ways to
In Amazon, I think there's
proactively,
white hat, gray hat, black hat, right?
right. I was
As
trying to think of
long
a
as you
word to
stay
describe.
gray or white, you're good.
Right. You don't want those black hat
Yeah.
tactics. Those are not good. And we could get into those. We're kind of on the topic of reviews, and I know that's something that I have had some experience with. And again, like I mentioned, there's a lot of weird people out there that will leave weird reviews just because they don't like you. I would like to think that competitors are above that, but I know they're not because they're people, and people are crazy. To just leave a bad review on your product just because they're selling the same thing you are, and yada yada yada. Is there anything a brand can do to protect their IP from stuff like that? From uh, clearly false reviews, or I know Amazon has a lot of systems in place to kind of go about that a little bit. But is there anything that they can do, say fake reviews, or just again those weird black hat competitor tactics?
Yeah. So there's very little, but there are some things. So first thing is I always like to tell brands, unless this is like like a real issue, like you've seen, enough stuff that it's truly impacting your brand, like it's taking you down a star, or you're seeing an influx of it, try to focus on other areas of your business because there's so much more that you can control. But there are going to be those times when you are clearly being targeted by something, and there's really only two things that you can do that I'm aware of right now in 2025. Because you can no longer publicly respond to reviews and tell people, tell your side of the story,
Right.
um, which is probably a good thing. A lot of brand owners are very passionate. I think that's probably one of the big reasons that was taken away. Um, so there is a way to report that reviews don't meet community guidelines. So there is a mechanism for doing that, and you can report things that don't meet community guidelines for some reasons. And if you can tie them back a lot of times to, a specific order. The verbiage in the review is the same as in an order, and you know that that was an abusive order. That's something that you can do, but you don't always have to have an order to tie it back to, or something like that. If you can prove that it doesn't meet the guidelines because it's specifically like attacking or derogatory or that kind of thing, those are things you can ask Amazon to remove. And that's a public facing tool. Anyone can go in and do that. And then if that doesn't work for you, which, a lot of times it won't, there are service providers in the space now who basically will just kind of spam support. They will work on your behalf to get erroneous reviews removed, whether it's a competitor review, whether it is a just a bad product review, like you said, like those weirdos out there who leave some weird review because they had an interaction with the product and
Right.
they don't understand how those individual reviews can impact a product or a seller. Um, or somebody left a wrong review on a wrong product, like clearly they're talking about shoes here and this is a consumable product. Amazon, you need to remove this. So there are service providers who will do that as a service. They will just work and work and work on it until they can get the right person on the right case to get something removed for you. Those are really the two things that I know of right now that you can do once a review has hit, to have those taken down. But like I said, because those options are so slim, unless it's a big problem for you, let's say you have 30 reviews, so that one bad review is really impacting you. Your time would be better spent figuring out how to get more reviews, doing the things to get more products, running a sale, something that's going to get more products shipping more quickly, to just build your reviews more quickly, than if you were to focus on that one review, because over time you're probably going to get 100 more good reviews and that one is just not going to matter.
Right.
Versus if you've got somebody spamming you with bad reviews and it's clearly a competitor, then that's the kind of thing I would go after.
Right. And it's hard to, you could have 10,000 reviews and you see a couple bad ones and you're not going to focus on all the great ones that you got. It's going to be like, I think it's easy for people to lock in on those bad reviews and say, I have to fix this immediately. Something has to be taken care of. And maybe if you're getting some bad reviews, you have a new batch of product that came out that it's not as good. If you have something like shoes and they're falling apart, maybe that's something that internally you have to look at. Sure. But, um, you're right. Like
Yeah.
there's so many more things you can control that I think some of these black hat tactics that come in are, if you're at a good point, then maybe you don't really have to focus too much on them.
And that was a really good point too that I didn't mention, is don't just assume because you have bad reviews you should look at getting them removed. Pay attention to what they're saying, because like you said, if there is a new batch of your shoes that has, the soles are coming off, pay attention to what's happening with that. Pull those products from FBA, fix your issues, and then relaunch so that it can be addressed. And if you've gotten bad reviews for a product like that, that is something where it's not a competitor. You actually do have an order that's tied to it. You can go through those orders and see where people have left you reviews and said it's a problem, and you can contact those people. That is something you can do, right? Not
Yes.
public facing, but you can contact those people. You can't ask them to give you a 5-star review. You can't ask them to change their review, but you can make their experience better, and then they may go change that review. You could, say, hey, we had a bad batch, but we're happy to send you a new pair. Give them a good customer service experience, and then they may choose to go and change that review.
It's part of the price. It's part of, like we mentioned earlier, it's part of the emotional aspect that comes with buying the product is, am I going to have a good customer experience if, God forbid, this product doesn't work or it goes wrong? That's all part of it. That's all something that I think people on Amazon, maybe newer sellers, don't consider. They don't think about. They just want to have the lowest price and the most affordable thing, and blah 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 blah. But um, you're right. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, we do that. We implement that. We love. I have had some bad products that I got messaged for. They did send me a good coupon, so I will say that. You can do that stuff. You can say, "Oh, here's this. You use this code, blah blah blah," or not so much use a code, but let us send you a new product, and then they
Yeah.
can. I don't want to expose them because they did send me an insert. I know that's shaky as well.
No, so I'm
So
glad you said that, because that's something I really like to talk about. You can put
yes,
inserts in boxes. In some
yep,
cases, it's actually required that you do these things, like children's products. They have to be trackable. So you have to have some way to encourage people to go and put the code from their product onto the registration list, right? So it's a
right,
great tool that people should be leveraging. What's tricky about what you put on them is you don't want to incentivize someone to go shop somewhere else. You
anywhere
don't
else,
want
yeah,
to incentivize someone to leave you a good review or change their review, or here's a discount for giving us a review, even if it's not a good review. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something I really love to talk about, because I guess again from the background that I have, and toys, and then safety compliance, those things are required. You have to have your contact information on the box, right? They need to know what your website is, what your phone number is, so that they can contact you for those traceability issues. And so take advantage of those things. Have an insert in the box that direct somebody to your website to register their product, not to shop, but to register their product. Then you've
Right.
captured their email. Then you have all those
I was to say, yeah.
opportunities to have all those other conversations. But if you're including inserts, make sure that your inserts are compliant.
Right. And Amazon does have, I believe, a list of things that you cannot put on inserts. So you can just avoid all those.
Yep.
One of the things we do when we take on a brand that's brand new to Amazon, one of the things I have done in the past as a brand manager was I recommend to the founder, you're sending in however many, like maybe 100 units for the first shipment if it's like a smaller product. Depends on the product and the category, of course. But your first 100 units, right? Write a little note in there. It says, you are one of my first customers on Amazon. Make just like a handwritten note. You can handwrite 100 notes. If you built a business and you're selling on Amazon, you have the time, maybe. You can put this as
Somebody does, probably.
somebody does. Yeah, somebody handwrite notes and say, thank you for being one of our first customers. Really appreciate it. You don't say anything about it, leave us a review. Just that's it. Thank you for being one of our first customers. We at X, Y, and Z business really appreciate it. And you being part of our journey on Amazon. Simple, done,
I
easy.
love that. Yeah.
Builds again that emotional. People are going to see that, and if it's a reusable, they're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I have to order more of these." That's what my first thought would be if I ever got one of those. If I found somehow a brand, and I probably won't because I don't really buy things that are under 1,000 reviews. But if I got a note from a brand that said, "Thank you so much for buying our products," I'm a sucker, so I would buy 100 more. So
Yeah, and then, truly, if you're advising them to put it in the first 100 or so, hopefully by the time that person reorders, they don't get that note again. And then that just
right,
re-emphasizes how authentic and real that thing was. That's a really great tip.
right, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Well, white hat. That's definitely a white hat
It is, yeah.
topic. Yeah, or
Yep,
a white hat
absolutely.
tactic. Definitely not. I wouldn't say it's gray. That's nice. It's nice. Inserts can be a little gray. Like we said, there's some restrictions around them, um, but looking at, one of the things that this is a little bit braggy, a little bit like, oh, hey, a little salesy. One of the things that we're doing at Velocity is we're expanding to anywhere that our partners are. So if you're selling on any e-commerce site, doesn't have to be Amazon, could be Shopify, Target, Walmart, Best Buy, Dick's Sporting Goods, Staple, anywhere. We're operating on those on the websites. So Jess, I don't think we talked much about omni-channel, but do you have any comparisons? Do you have any tips for managing your brand protection on these other sites as well? I know most of you guys out there watching are Amazon brands, but you should want to expand to these places, so you should maybe want to know about these compliances. So, Jess, do you have any stories or anything like that about these other websites and how they manage brand protection?
Yeah, I think, people are so focused in on, and I'm glad you said, you should want to be thinking about this. I would say even at this point, if you're not selling omni-channel in some capacity in 2025, you are definitely behind the curve because you are one account restriction away from, having your whole business shut down. So
Right.
definitely, if you're not thinking about it, think about expanding. But it can be as simple as your own website so that you can control all of that. But there are costs and there are pitfalls for any of the platforms. Again, going back to, my early days in manufacturing and selling into like your more, traditional retailers, a Target or a Walmart or Kohl's.com, they're all going to have their own compliance and, restrictions about what you can and can't do. And it's equally expensive and equally difficult to sell on every single channel. So that's, I think, what I like to let everyone know out of the gate. When
Hmm.
you expand to wherever you're expanding to, there are going to be things that you have to learn about those channels. So don't try to do it all at once. Now that you've mastered Amazon, move on to one more and then move on to one more and then move on to one more because you're going to have to learn and they're all going to be different. Some of these things can work together. Amazon now really does work together nicely with Shopify because of buy with Prime and all of those opportunities, right? There are some additional expenses with that, but if you want to own your customers and you want to own your customer data, but you want to um, quickly scale up the traffic or the conversion, I guess it's not necessarily a traffic enhancer, but certainly a conversion enhancer. because when somebody lands on your site and they are a native Amazon shopper, but they want to check out your brand, having that buy with Prime button, having your Amazon reviews pulled over to your Shopify store through that buy with Prime connection gives those shoppers the assurance they need that they can check out with confidence, that they're going to have, all of the same benefits that they're going to have shopping through Amazon, but you own that customer. You know who they
Right.
are, you have their information, you can remarket to them however you would want. You could send SMS messages, you can, put coupons, send coupons to their email, whatever you want to do. So I think that I've answered your question initially and then went into an entirely different
Love it.
topic area, but
Love it. No,
that's
it's true. I mean, the email stuff with Amazon is hard, not being able to retarget them as easy as you would on your own website.
mhm.
Obviously you have store followers, which is nice. You can send a blast out to them. Hey, a new product. Hey, we have a coupon going. But it's different when you have their a physical email address. You can do more things with that.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, email, physical address,
right.
phone number, whatever they've given you, you have those opportunities. And I think, that kind of thing you'll find from one platform to another is very different what you have access to or not. But just all of the same things apply as Amazon, but for that platform. So like find your things. What are the brand protection tools that are available there? A big one for a lot of the more traditional retailers is making sure that you have MAP. On
Yeah.
Amazon, you can't have MAP, and Amazon will not enforce MAP. That's not their area of interest. But a Kohl's will follow MAP, a Target will follow MAP, and like if you're selling to them directly versus selling onto them as marketplaces. If you're selling onto them as a marketplace, then of course you control that. Um, but keeping that consistency of your brand across whatever platforms and utilizing the tools that are there for you to protect you, because that pricing one I think is one of the very first things that you mentioned, and it is
Hmm.
so important throughout the entire e-commerce journey, especially if you're selling on Amazon, because of that pricing parity rule that they have. Because they it's not, I know this came up with a client recently, is are they doing something that is price fixing? And it's not. It really isn't. If they don't give you the buy box because you don't have the lowest price available on the internet, your product is still available for sale. They're just making people jump through a hoop. And it's a really interesting thing to me because we used to talk about with MAP in more traditional retail spaces. If I was selling to Target and Target was retailing my product to shoppers and they wanted to break MAP for a sale, they were allowed to do that if they didn't show the price until it was in the cart. So people had to click on the product and put it in their cart before they could see the price of the item. But that was a completely acceptable. Everybody liked that policy because it allowed Target to run their sale without interrupting your other channels. What Amazon does with the buy box is not that different. They're making people take one extra step to get the product into their cart and see the price. I mean, they can see the price, but it's not in their cart, right? They're adding another step. It's just a different step. But we all have an issue with that. It's a problem when the buy box isn't there, when the featured offer, like click to add to cart button, isn't there. But we were okay with it the way that traditional retailers handled it. So it's so interesting how differently we interact with Amazon and their rules than other rules in other places. Um, I lost my train of thought a little bit. I don't remember why I even got on that topic, but yeah, it's just
It's just
like
omni-channel.
yeah,
Right.
protecting your price, having that, consistency across everywhere so it doesn't disrupt, so one thing doesn't disrupt the other.
Right.
Um,
And having that consistency is of course key if in the images and in the content as well. Um, like I know people that don't that what's a good word? A good SAT word. That behoove Amazon. Or that's maybe I don't know if that means it. They don't like Amazon. They don't like it. They don't like to shop on it. I'm actually my girlfriend, despite me being an Amazon, despite Velocity Sellers being partnered with Amazon, despite me working with Amazon every day of my life, she hates it. She doesn't shop on Amazon unless she absolutely has to. You do
I'm
as
the
well?
same. Yeah. And
Wow.
I know, and I say it out loud because I want people to recognize that there are people like me out there. Um, and it's because I know if I can go to a brand's website or there's other ways for me to interact and still support those brands. But if I do go to
Hmm.
Amazon, I'm going to make sure that I check out through one of those small businesses directly rather than, going through a different route. So yeah, sorry to
Right.
interrupt,
No,
but
no, no.
I'm
That's
one of those.
it's nice to meet another one because I don't know many. I have been sucked into the trap of it's easier Sometimes if I see a small business badge, I'll consider checking out the website, at least to give them a click and like poke around. But most of the time I can't
It's too
pass up
easy.
some. It's too easy. Sometimes when you live near a big, like I live near Dallas, and so some days if I order before noon, I can get the product delivered that afternoon.
Right.
So that's hard. That's hard to say, no, you know what, I'm gonna go support. I'm still supporting you, but I'm gonna go support you more and wait longer. If it's something I absolutely need, if it's something I don't absolutely need, then fine. I will wait. I will go to the website. I have done that a few times, but the large majority is I see it on Amazon, done. There's a coupon, done. There's a strike through price, done. I
Yeah.
ordered it in my cart. It's on the way already. So it's hard to it's, it's hard to justify. I do think there should be other options. I do think there should be other channels that you should be on. Of course, that's what we tell our partners. That's what I'm taking a stance on and saying that
Yeah.
you should have your product elsewhere. Don't put all your chickens in one basket. Don't put all your eggs in one basket or your chickens all in one hen house. Maybe I don't know if that works, but you should be spreading out
I think that
your.
does work because let me tell you, I had 21 hens and now I have 7 because they're all in one hen house, and once a bear
Mm,
figures out how to get into that hen house, no matter what you do, he's going to come back week after week and
right,
eat more of your chickens. So yeah,
right.
spread them out just like just like your
Spread them
eggs,
out.
spread them
Spread
out.
them out. We had an episode, or I was meeting with a partner, and we were talking about different phrases that are just some of them are like really like the really weird one is there's so many ways to skin a cat. Why are you skinning a cat in the first place?
Yeah. Yep.
So I say there's a lot of ways to cook an egg now instead of that. And the other one is like kill two birds with one stone. First of all,
Again,
that
why?
can't be possible unless it's a really big stone. But instead I say feed two mouths with one meal. So
You're putting a positive spin on all this. I like it.
yes, and I like to cook, so that is something that I just see every day. I'm like, oh, there's a new one right there. But anyway, yeah, it is it's just very interesting how some people are so um they're so drawn into Amazon, not even as a customer, but as seller wise,
Yeah.
they don't want to go anywhere else. As a seller, like I'm on Amazon, that's it. That's all I want to worry about. No, no, go on Shopify.
I-
Go on if your product is fit for it. Go on Etsy.
Yeah.
Go on these. I know people that have sporting good products that sell things that would fit in a Dick's Sporting Goods. I'd say I'm not even gonna bother. Why would I bother? Why would you bother? That's a whole other platform you can
Yeah.
expand on. I
That
don't
and
get it.
that's why two things. First of all, do you work at all with Fair? Because that used to be one of my favorite ones to encourage people like your Dick's Sporting Goods
Mm,
example,
mm,
where there is like true retail shelf opportunity, but they haven't been able to do that. Fair is a great like kind of middleman where brands can list their products for sale, they can have MOQs, but they can basically get into a ton of small brick and mortar stores, mom and pop shops who otherwise couldn't necessarily afford to purchase what would be required of a MOQ from them, like what
right.
a big box store would require. But because of being able to order a little bit from this brand, a little bit from this brand, a little bit from this brand on Fair, the those mom and pop shops can get their hands on things to test them out, and brands that we would represent that are a fit for brick and mortar stores get that opportunity to get in front of some eyes, and then more eyes are seeing them and more eyes are seeing them, and that's going to open up some more of those big box opportunities. So that's another platform I'd love to encourage people to check out. But I was going to say that's the main reason, exactly what you're explaining right now is the main reason I raise my hand and say I'm not your Amazon native shopper. I'm not the person who's always going to go to Amazon, because there are people like me. There are people who shop at Walmart who shop at Walmart. That's their store, whether it's in
Right.
person or online. They are a
Yep.
Walmart shopper, and the same with Target. So, like, recognizing that there are different people who could also all be a fit for your brand, and they're not all on Amazon. So, meet your shopper where they are.
Right. Meet the shopper where they are is great. That might be the quote. I'll write that down. That might be a great quote. I know it's not directly related to the whole brand protection, brand image thing, but still, I mean, it's important. It's an
It
important
is,
topic.
and as you expand to more, more platforms, that brand protection becomes so much more important, and the brand
Right.
building, because I think brand building is an important part of the brand protection because it's part of that recognizability. So yeah, it's totally related. We're
Yeah.
not even
Yep.
stretching. It fits.
Yeah. It fits in there. I might have to use that as the quote. Because I love having we started using quotes on the episode and they're very fun. Um, But yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you're saying, and it makes a whole lot of sense. I hope the brands out there are understanding this as well, just to get a good sense of, okay, like this is, in 2025, you should not just be on Amazon. You should be expanding. And with that comes, again, like you said, with that comes expanding your shield or expanding your brand protection to make sure that you're stable and you're okay on these other platforms as well. Uh, and speaking of the time, with e-commerce becoming more and more important, there's plenty of statistics out there that it's becoming a really big part of the sales cycle, including in-person shopping. I know there's a couple malls that I'm sure people have seen unfortunately closed down because people are just buying online. With the and it's very sad, but looking at e-commerce with us that work in e-commerce, that's we like to see the e-commerce grow. But with the growing importance of e-commerce, uh, what do you think is going to be any future trend? What are some of the possibilities of the future of brand protection on Amazon, on just online in general? And do you have any predictions on new challenges that maybe brands should be prepared for or should start proactively trying to potentially avoid? Maybe something with
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, I mean, AI is a big piece, and I think I think this whole topic is both positives and negatives. I think that the future of brand protection on e-commerce is positive because I think Amazon specifically is moving more and more towards being brand centric because they realize that's what keeps the money coming to the website. That is what brings in the higher dollar orders, and that's what brings those repeat shoppers. So I think the future is Amazon leaning more heavily into it and providing more tools and doing more things to protect brands. Um, but I do think that for especially for those kind of like white label, the in between, you're an established brand, you're moving in the right direction. Your white label, you're kind of caught in the middle of not quite being that brand, but also not quite being that direct from the factory, um, no thought or no like human behind your brand. With Amazon's distinction between this typical market and Amazon Haul, like not getting caught up in that Amazon Haul side of things where you aren't promoted as a brand, where you're low budget, people are just going to get like the cheap junk to try it out. Like making sure that if you're in that middle ground of being a white label product, that you don't find yourself in the Amazon Halls or the Sheins or Temus. Although I
Right.
shouldn't say that because they're both of those platforms as well are making brand initiatives. Um, they are trying to get trusted brands to bring up the trust of the websites as well. And I mean, Steve Madden is working with Shein. There are a lot of opportunities in those areas as well. But just thinking in the traditional space, what we're kind of focusing on Amazon is if you want to be a brand on Amazon, be a brand on Amazon and take your cues from what they're doing with Amazon Haul and all of the brand
Right.
protections to not be thought of as just a commodity item, to put yourself in that brand bucket, to move out of the middle section and move into that brand bucket and start using all of those tools because I think there's bigger distinctions coming on Amazon. They are really, really focused on the brand because they know that's what's bringing in the business and they're going to continue to be doing things that enhance the brands. And it sounds like some things that will enhance the commodity products as well, but not maybe in the way that you as a brand owner would want. You don't want to be in that bucket if you truly are interested in building a brand.
Right. And it it makes sense. I mean, like you said, if you want to stay on Amazon, focus on it. Cool, go for it. Um, but again, I don't recommend that. I think you should be expanding. I think you should be expanding. Um, but I will say one thing about Shein too. You mentioned Steve Madden was working with them. I have a pair of Steve Madden shoes. I got them at a thrift store with the tags on. I'm a big thrifter. That was
Same.
not important. Just wanted to include
No,
that
we
as a
could
little
do a
bit of a
whole
brag.
episode on that as well if you want to,
Yes,
because
please. I
big
love
thrifter as
thrifting.
well.
I think I'm gonna stay on and do. I'm gonna start my own personal podcast where I talk to you guys about business stuff, and then I have you on the other one, and we just talk about, hey, what are you into? What are your hobbies?
Yeah,
That sounds like a business, $1 million idea.
I will sign up for that. Let me know.
Perfect. First guess. No. Where was I going with that? Oh, Shein. I have people that order on Shein. I know people that have had actually a really good customer experience on there. That said, this is not just a cheapy website. It's not just like I'm gonna make fun of Temu. It's not like a Temu where it's just like this is the bottom of the barrel stuff. Products that are some I've heard some. okay stories. I've heard some not so good stories about stuff from Temu. But they say Shein has pretty good customer experience. Um,
Yeah,
and again,
that's
sorry,
kind
go
of
ahead.
why I immediately backtracked, because I
Yep.
have to say I'm on the advisory council for the Prosper show, so I help to plan
Oh,
that show, and both Timu and Shein are exhibiting this year.
oh,
But I wasn't doing it from an optics perspective as I was saying what I said. Like I really realized how wrong it was or how short-sighted. That is the experience with both of them today. Shein has already moved ahead in what we expect from them and what we're getting from them. And so I think Temu is probably not too far behind. They're going to evolve the same way that Amazon has. Maybe never
right.
to the exact level, but yeah, that
Mhm.
evolution is already happening. We're seeing it, and I shouldn't have that might be the experience or expectation today, but that's not what it's going to be 6 months from now. And that was a pretty short-sighted comment. So I did start backpedaling it right away, but yeah, those are two emerging platforms, and I definitely can't predict what they're going to be. If we had this
Yeah.
conversation a year from now, what the experience would be. But I can tell you already, I know from experience that Shein is investing in brands. And I'm sure that Temu, like that's the whole point of being at Prosper, is to go directly to the brands,
Right.
instead of going just to factories. So I would assume we're going to see that same path. And a year from now, we'd be having a different conversation about both.
I'll have to have you back on in a year from now. We can see
Let's
how they've
bookmark it.
evolved from then. Yeah, but I'll put it in my calendar for 2026. Now, Jess, I really want to thank you so much for joining us today and coming on the show to talk to me about brand image, brand protection, and a variety of other topics that are all very interesting. I definitely learned a lot. I hope all of you out there learned something as well. Jess, I want to give you uh, one more question, one final thought. Really, is what any do you have any final thoughts on uh, brand protection, brand image? Really, just a recap of everything we talked about. Any last pieces of advice for our viewers out there?
Yeah, for any of you, I think this is something we didn't touch on, but I think it's super important. Um, Anybody who is a new to Amazon or new to e-commerce brand, the most important thing is to do it right from the start, especially as we're talking about Amazon. You know, get your things done in the right order. Get your trademark, and then move on to Amazon brand registry, and then move on to the rest of it. Don't try to do it all at once, just like we mentioned before, like trying to do too many different platforms all at once, like new stuff. Do it in the right order, because with Amazon specifically, it is so hard to undo the problems that you create. And an example that I was just talking about internally at the company recently, where one of our brands used another agency to get their trademarks. So that company actually, like, they paid them a service fee. That agency went and got their trademark for them. That agency is the respondent on with USPTO. So when then they came to us and now they're working with us and we're trying to set up their brand registry, they're not getting the communications that brand registry is sending to try to verify USPTO, because those things are going to the previous agency. So just
Right.
understanding like your full, like that full chain of command, where things start and end, and doing it right from the start is what's going to set you up for success. And that seems like a simple thing, but you don't realize you're just a new brand owner out there trying to do it all. Do it in order, do it right, and you'll be set up for success. Otherwise, there's a lot of things to untangle, and some things on Amazon cannot be undone.
Right. My grandfather was a carpenter, and he always had that same thing that every other carpenter says: measure twice, cut once,
Yeah,
and then applies here. You want to
that
get
was
it
a
right the first time.
much better, shorter way to say what I said.
Mine was boring though. Yours had a lot more depth to it. Mine was just, this is what my grandpa used to say. It's my grandpa used to say. Um, but yeah, no, Jess, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Make sure everybody use like and subscribe to see our next episode. Not only the one a year from now with me and Jess back again, but also all of our future episodes to continue learning with me and learn more about these variety of different Amazon topics that we cover. Jess, thank you again so much for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm Velocity Pete, and we'll see you next week.